For kneeling counter stretch, you're going to need something to kneel over. So for me, I'm using this chair. You don't have to use a chair. You could be using like a coffee table or something like that. But what you're looking for is something that when you kneel, keeps your hips almost in alignment with the elbows. So you don't want the elbows to be too high or too low in comparison to your hips. So this is what it sort of looks like. I also recommend not using something that's too squishy. So if you have like a sofa or a bed or something, you'll find it harder to push down and get momentum with your arms. For kneeling counter stretch, we're coming to this kneeling position. Our knees are hip width apart. We're trying to keep the tops of our feet and our shins on the floor. So don't let your feet kind of curl up away from the floor. You're trying to push them down into the floor. And you're watching that your pelvis doesn't move backwards relative to the hips or doesn't move forwards relative to the hips. You're trying to keep, relative to the knees. You're trying to keep your hips above your knees. And what you're doing is really tilting your pelvis down and forwards into an anterior pelvic tilt. So we don't want any of this going on. We've really got to try and get the pelvis down and forwards, and if you can go far enough, you should feel that kind of bite in at the hip flexors at the front because they are controlling that movement of the pelvis. So really, really, really drive that pelvis down towards the floor. I have a tendency where I want to like buckle into my rib cage here. So you can see here I'm kind of sinking passively into my rib cage and upper back, and that is basically a rib cage flare in action. So I'm keeping driving forward with my pelvis, but I tuck my rib cage in so that I'm nice and straight through the whole of my spine. Be careful as you tuck your rib cage in that you don't go the other way and then start putting your pelvis and your spine into flexion. You've still got to drive forwards with that pelvis, but you just don't want to collapse into the ribs. So you lift the ribs up, but you stay driving forwards with the pelvis. Your head comes in between your hands like this. I've got my elbows in this type of position on the chair, and I'm going to push down with my forearms and my hands into the chair that I have. So my knees are stacked, my feet are on top of pushing down onto the floor. I'm rolling my pelvis forwards, tucking that rib cage in so I don't sag into my rib cage, and I'm pushing down through my forearms. My head stays completely relaxed. I'm still maintaining that control of my breath that is oh so important. So we're going to spend a minute here. I'm going to set a timer. Any knee pain, any neck pain, any wrist pain, pull out of the exercise. It's not the one for you. And if it's just hard work but you can't do the full minute, do what you can and come and work towards a full minute again in the future. So 3, 2, 1, off we go. Knees are hip width apart, hips stay above the knees, the pelvis tilts forwards anteriorly. We sink the head down, draw the rib cage in, spine still stays straight, pelvis still drives forward, and we push down with our forearms and we pull back through our shoulder blades. So we're trying to keep our shoulder blades away from our ears. Relax the head. Pull those shoulders back and down like you did in the floor block. Push down through the forearms. Tuck that rib cage in. I really want to flare mine. Drive forwards with the pelvis, but not moving the pelvis forwards at the knees. We're sort of tipping it downwards, which is what I mean by forwards. We've got just 15 seconds left. 15. Tops of feet on the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is kneeling counter stretch.